10 before the hour. All right, we're going to do podcast trivia when we come back from the top of the hour break. So if you want to play, now's the time to call in. 877-996-2556 is the number. If you get the correct answer to the trivia question based on this week's news in our inimitable way, if you get the right answer, you will win a 1-year subscription to Malloy Program podcast downloads, commercial-free, sent to your electronic device each day. All right? Do it now, 877-996-2556. Got my current issue of The Nation today, and David Cole, who is the Nation's legal affairs correspondent, has a rather lengthy piece in here, but there's a couple of things in here. We mentioned this earlier this week about all the countries who had participated in our torture protocol, our rendition protocol. What was that called, Kathy? The full term for the rendition. Extreme rendition, sending people to to prisons around the globe. And David Cole, writing at The Nation, points out that when Bush launched the war on terror, so-called, he defined the enemy as terrorist groups of global reach. That was Bush's way of putting it. Cole says an important report released February 5th by the Open Society Justice Initiative shows that a central element of the Bush administration's response to the 9/11 attack was itself to spread terror on a global scale. The report is entitled Globalizing Torture, and it reveals, as we mentioned earlier this week, that while the U.S. was the progenitor of the CIA program that abducted, rendered, disappeared, and tortured terrorist suspects, at least 54 other nations participated in this, right? We talked about this. Or are otherwise implicated in the program. The report names names from Afghanistan to Zimbabwe and calls for the accountability that thus far has been almost entirely missing. And as David Cole points out, some nations such as Poland and Thailand allowed the CIA to establish secret prisons or so-called black sites on their territory. Some countries like Syria, Jordan, Pakistan, and Egypt tortured suspects the CIA rendered to them. Some, like Macedonia, Georgia, Sweden, delivered suspects to the CIA, essentially handing them over to be tortured. Some, like Canada and Britain, provided intelligence that the CIA then used to capture, render, or interrogate suspects. Some, like Germany and Britain, participated in the interrogations themselves. Many, including Belgium, Iceland, Greece, and Denmark, allowed rendition flights to use their airports and airspace. And nearly all of these countries have failed to conduct serious investigations of their complicity in the U.S. turn to the dark side. Yeah. And you ought to read it. Go to thenation.com. You may be able to read it free. Cole just says, what are we to make of these worldwide tentacles of the extraordinary rendition program? And you can, he comes to some conclusions. I'm sure that you will come to some of your own if you haven't already. But it was a real shock to me to find from this report that over 50 nations were complicit in this. And after the shock, I kind of sat there and said, oh, come on, Malloy. Come on. Do you think the United States is the only country on earth that is sick and twisted? And then the follow-up thought is, yeah, but so many of these countries that participated, what kind of inducement was used to get them to participate? I mean, really, stop and think about it. What possible reason? Is it their own fear of some sort of, I mean, is Denmark or Zimbabwe? I mean, these countries obviously have their own problems, but are they countries that are fearful of Al-Qaeda? I mean, or radical Islamists? Maybe it's just the fear of not wanting to get in the crossfire between the Christians and the Muslims, because this has been going on for, 1,500 years now. And there's no stopping point in sight. This holy war between Muslims and Christians, which is total madness. I mean, you know it as well as I do, but do you also agree, disagree that such a war exists? I mean, to me, there's no question. This is just a continuation of the terror that these two religions have brought on each other, themselves, on the Jews, on minority groups. I mean, think about it. So, I don't know. I wonder if the reason there were so many willing nations willing to participate in the actual operation of international war crimes. Wow. What would prompt these countries to do this? And I think all the nations involved, they're all members of the United Nations. They all have signed on, as the U.S. has, to all of these little agreements and treaties about the dignity of man and yada, yada, yada. And, you know, you want to look at this stuff and read it and see the videos and hear the reports and then just kind of sit back and say, oh, please.